makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part.
So it happened. War has begun. Russia is officially invading Ukraine, not just the pro separatist bit, but is launching a full scale military assault on Ukraine. Without a doubt, the most significant military operation in Europe since World War II. And this is scary. This is really scary. Now, as you can see, this is a rather impromptu video. I'm not in my usual room and I don't have my usual camera, so apologies for the quality and the lack of preparedness that I have. Not that I prepare most of my videos, to be honest, but this is, at least you'll get to see me in color, which is a rarity. So, what's going on? Full-scale invasion. You can assume that it's happening on many different parts of Ukraine. In fact, there are reports of attacks heading into Odessa, which is in the south, well, west of the Crimea, around Kharkov, which is near the border with Russia. There's reports of troops also invading through Belarus, which is not surprising at all, since they were hosting about 30,000 Russian troops on supposed military drills. And possible also, well, not possible, it's happening, also an attack towards Mariupol, which is in the Donbass region. It's the largest port in that area. So by the way, I have to start by saying that I do have some actual professional experience on security matters. I know that I'm an economist first and foremost, but I've also done work for the International Institute of Strategic Studies, and I've had work published in Military Balance and other publications like that. So I know a thing or two about this. Having said that, I'm not a Russia or Eastern Europe expert by any chance, so please take what I say with the caveat of semi-expertise on some military issues, but not specific to this region. So with that said, I will just give opinions of what I think is likely to happen. So let's look at the map of Ukraine. Now, this map, I like this map because it shows the cities and it shows the topography and geography pretty well. But what I don't like is that it kind of makes Ukraine look a bit more rugged than it actually is. And the truth is, aside from that bit of the Carpathian Mountains that you can see to the west, that sort of plateau that you see west of the Dnieper River, which is the one that runs, that kind of cuts Ukraine in half, that's not really as rugged as it looks. Ukraine is a very flat country. It's a very tank-friendly country. During World War II, two of Germany's major offensives were launched in this part of the former Soviet Union, both the southern flank of the Barbarossa invasion, which was relatively successful. There was a massive encirclement of Kiev at the time, which was one of the most catastrophic defeats that the Red Army suffered in those opening months of the invasion. And there was also the 1942 offensive, when it was called Operation Blue. That was the offensive that led the German army towards Stalingrad. And at least the opening part of the offensive was incredibly successful. They got relatively quickly to the outskirts of Stalingrad, I believe, from around August. So the invasion started in July, and by August they were already at the outskirts of Stalingrad. And then another pincer went down to the Caucasus. They got all the way to Chechnya, actually. So at least that part was very successful. And part of the reason is, again, Ukraine is a very flat country. It's very easy to make encirclements. It's good tank country. It does have the problem of rivers, but clearly those were not insurmountable obstacles for the German army back in 1941 and 1942. And there's even less reason to suspect that they will be major obstacles to a Russian army today, given that river crossing equipment is generally better, although it is easier to mount defenses than it was in the past. So, what is Putin's target? I would say the minimal objective here is to take, and this is what he openly stated, that he wants to respect the territory that the separatist republics claim, and that territory incorporates not just the parts of Donetsk and Luhansk that they already control, but the entire region, so the full region. And that is the immediate trigger to the war. Now, it's incredibly naive to assume that Putin is going to stop there. And as you can see from the map, there's a lot of options that it has. I don't remember a recent conflict in which the defender has such a massive disadvantage geographically. This is an absolute nightmare for any Ukrainian commander because Russia can basically attack you from pretty much every direction. It's attacking you from Belarus, it's attacking you from different parts of Russia itself. It can attack you through, well, across the Crimea. Um, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. You have to basically prepare for an attack on every front at any possible moment. And for what we know now, that's exactly what's going on. So, yeah, this is absolutely terrifying. But forget about the tactical thing. I'm concerned about what's going to happen. What's the post-war outcome, and that is what territory Russia is likely to keep. And like I said, the minimum is the Donbass, those two Donbass regions that I am absolutely sure that he's going to want to annex. But now that you've crossed the Rubicon, you wouldn't just necessarily stop at that, would you? So there is, I would say, a very high likelihood that at the very least, what Putin wants is to create a land bridge that goes all the way from Russian territory to the Crimea. Because as it is, the Crimea is relatively isolated because there's really only like a very small land bridge that you can have direct contact to Russia. So creating a land bridge across all that part of the coastline of the Sea of Azov, I think, is the natural outcome. Now, would it stop at that? Would it take more territory? I would say there's a likelihood of that. There's two problems with that. The first is obviously that aside from the separatist regions, most of eastern Ukraine, which presumably are the bits that he would want, territorially speaking, are ethnically Ukrainian. They are Ukrainian speaking. They are probably not fond at all of the Russians. And this is a very highly populated country. That's 44 million people. It's a big country as well. It's bigger than any Western European country. So the risk of some prolonged separatist, Ukrainian separatist insurgency would be huge, especially if it gets funded by the West some way. I think it would be much harder to get sufficient supplies to them to mount a protracted and serious insurgency, but everything's possible. I mean, if the Iraqis could mount a semi-successful insurgency against the U.S. for many years, it's not inconceivable that that any Ukrainian insurgency could be easily armed, funded by the U.S. and the West. Now the question is, how would Russia react to that? If there is an insurgency, what would be the scale of brutality that Russia would be willing to inflict on the insurgency? And that is very worrying, very, very worrying. As bad as the U.S. was in occupying Iraq, I'm pretty sure that Putin would be much, much worse how it treats insurgents. So this is potentially a human rights catastrophe in the making, a really, really horrible outcome. Aside from that, well, what are the odds of, well, if I was the Ukrainian commander, what would I do? Again, I'm speaking with no military experience other than being a bit of a military buff and a World War II buff, but I would say there's really only two ways that you can engage this war. One is you try and stop Russia, every inch of the way, and I think that would be incredibly stupid because, like I said, you have such a huge geographical disadvantage that you can basically be outflanked very, very easily and cut off. And I'm sure that that would play into exactly what Russia wants. If that were to happen, then the bulk of the heavy units of the or not just the heavy units, but the trained units. You know, the reserve. Sorry, not the reserve. The active military units of the Ukrainian army could be destroyed very easily, encircled and destroyed, and that would essentially leave Ukraine defenseless, and it would just basically allow the Russians to take over the entire country. And this would be kind of similar to what happened in 1940 when the Germans invaded France. You know, scored a decisive victory in Sedan, and from then on, there was absolutely nothing the French army could do. So something similar to that. You know, the ability of Ukrainian, you know, if a defeated Ukrainian army, there's really not much that they can, you know, they've called for reservists. You know, they can bring up a lot of men with arms, but you know, if you lose your heavy equipment in a country that is basically tank territory, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. The best you could hope for is you know, some degree of resistance in urban areas, but yeah, the outcome would be a bit bleak, if you ask me. The other option, I would say, and this would be the more sensible one, is basically a tactical retreat. A tactical retreat to the west bank of the Dnieper River, and try and hold on to, you know, the Russians are probably going to cross the river anyway, in the south towards Odessa, and in the north, invading through Belarus. They already are on the west bank. Now, the thing about Kiev is that the important bits of the city are on the west bank. So, you know, the government palace, pretty much everything of strategic importance is on the west bank. So, they want to capture the capital, they have to take the west bank, and that gives the opportunity of the Ukrainian army to make a stand on the west bank, which I think would be a bit more sensible. Now, the problem with this is that, well, you're pretty much surrendering the eastern bank almost entirely, if not entirely, and you are basically allowing Putin to pretty much do whatever it wants with that part of your territory. The advantage of this second scenario is simply that whatever is left of the Ukraine, it is basically, it survives as an independent sovereign state. Reduced territory, but it won't be subjugated. That would be the only positive outcome of this. Whereas in the first scenario, you get clobbered and you get taken over. Russia dictates the terms. You will be demilitarized, and you will be a puppet state, at least for however long Vladimir Putin is alive. So both are very, very, very bad outcomes. From a tactical level, I think Ukraine is screwed. Like initially screwed. First couple of days, I think there will not be reports of many Ukrainian victories. I don't think so, and that is a good thing to some extent, because what you really want to do is you want to take away the moment. You don't want to challenge Russia's momentum, because you know you're fighting a much stronger enemy. So you don't. What you want to do is you want to wait until, you know, the enemy's plan keeps unfolding, because as time passes, every military plan, every operational plan becomes more subject to uncertainty and risk, and that increases the risk that, you know, Russia will fuck up, or that something will not go according to plan. And basically, that is when you strike. That is when Ukraine will take the opportunity to inflict, if possible, any kind of even, you know, small local battlefield victories. But that is how you do it, basically. So you want to wait until the initial momentum kind of dissipates, when you've moved past that, and it's very easy to make up a plan for an invasion, but it's much harder to follow up that invasion. Okay, that's basically what I'm getting at. And the thing is, Ukraine is a big country, but it's also not big enough that it'll give you infinite time to take advantage of these potential Russian mistakes. Again, that was the problem that France faced in 1940. You know, not just the problem of time, but the problem of space. And that is the problem that Russia did, or rather the Soviet Union did not suffer in 1941, because they had a huge amount of space. So all those massive defeats that they suffered in the opening weeks and months of Barbarossa, they could make up for it with time and space. And Russia and Ukraine doesn't have that much leeway. So it all depends on how successful these initial attacks from Russia are. And like I said, if as time goes by, things will not go according to the original plan, and it's up to the Ukrainian commanders to quickly pick up on those events and capitalize on it. So what they want is basically to not to win the war. I really don't think there's a chance in hell for Ukraine to win this war. But you want to basically inflict enough, make Russia's planned crushing victory not so crushing. And the moment that the Russian army is stalled, that's not going to look good for them. So that's kind of what you want. And what you basically want is for Putin to eventually sort of realize, okay, we've had enough. We made our point. We'll take what we have and we'll leave it at that. And that's the best hope that Ukraine can emerge from this conflict with some sort of sovereignty and not be a complete Russian puppet. Now, the other thing is time. Again, time works on Ukraine's side because Russia might have a big army, but there is really only one country on earth right now that can engage a protracted war, and that's the US. And the issue here are supplies. The issue is, how many missiles, how many bombs you have, and those in modern conflict, the rate of expenditure of weaponry is huge, especially the more expensive ones. So we're seeing a lot of reports of cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, etc., being fired. Those will run out relatively quickly, and Russia will have to resort on less sophisticated weaponry, which will be advantageous to the Ukrainians, especially if they end up getting more Western weapons, anti-tank guided missiles, things like that, that could blunt any Russian offensive. So time works on Ukraine's side. Russia is basically doing shock and awe right now, kind of how the US did during both the Gulf War in 2003, but it doesn't have the stocks of weapons that the US has. So they will run out. And once they run out of their nice expensive weapons, yeah, it's going to be tougher for them. So let's look at what we know on Twitter. So this is a map of where attacks are known to take place. So we can see clearly, the regions where the Russian land offensive is more likely, obviously being attacked, Kiev, but also there's been attacks on the western part of the country. These are, I presume, strategic attacks. I don't know, transport networks, command and control centers, airfields, things like that. These attacks can be really devastating for a country that isn't prepared. So it remains to be seen just how prepared Ukraine was for this. If they are, we will see those attacks, we will see those bombs, we will see the flashes, we will see the photos, and they will look very impressive and very scary. But if you are prepared for this, you can withstand it. There are ways to back up your command and control systems so that they're still functioning. So you don't suffer from that decapitating attack that Russia will want. So again, I don't know how prepared they are. Let's hope that they are. What else? Yeah. So the thing about Twitter is this will be a war where we will have information every second for the next however long this conflict lasts, and a lot of it will be difficult to interpret because we will know any incident that happens at this time, but we will not be able to fit this into the broader strategic narrative. That's going to be quite hard, and you're going to hear people say something, you're going to hear other people say another thing. I would take everything with a bit of a pinch of salt, not because I think the accounts that are going to be covering the conflict are lying. Far from it. I'm just saying that things that we might see might not actually be what is happening. So I saw, for example, report of the presidential building in Kiev being attacked, and then apparently you look at the Twitter comments, and guy basically saying like, I'm in Kiev, that's not the presidential palace. So you know, take everything with a pinch of salt. Wait a few days until we see how this fits into a broader narrative of what's going on. But it's still, this is what is actually happening. It just there's also reports of like Russian troops already taken Mariupol, and then there's another video showing Ukrainian armored vehicles actually like, no, the city has not fallen yet. So again, take everything with a pinch of salt. In a few days, we will know exactly what goes on. But yeah, this is pretty impressive. What is going on? There is, yeah, that is, I mean, if you were old enough, like I was, to remember the Iraq invasion in 2003, or even, I'm still old enough to remember the 1991 Gulf War, actually. Not very hazy memories, but they are there. And this is exactly this is the shock and awe. This is what they want to do. Yeah, a lot of people fleeing the capital. Probably a smart thing to do. There was a video that I wanted to show of a major attack outside of Kharkov. Kharkov, by the way, was a site of so many battles during World War II. Battles that would basically go in every direction. The Germans would take the city, then the Russians would take the city, then the Germans would take it again, and the Russians would take it again. It was one of the sites of one of the last major German victories in early 1943, February, I believe. And yeah, this video is impressive. So that is a rocket barrage outside of Kharkov. And again, these things all look very impressive, and it is you don't want to be on the receiving end of a rocket barrage. A single rocket, multiple launch rocket system, that's what they're called, MLRS, can devastate like a square kilometer. It's absolutely horrendous. But again, all of this depends on how well prepared Ukrainian defenses were. Because if they were very well prepared, they can survive this. A well-prepared defense can withstand incredible artillery barrages, and World War I is the best example of this. How many artillery barrages before the troops went over the hill, and then they got slaughtered because the defenders survived. So yeah, artillery is a bit of it's very impressive to look at when you see videos like that, but its effectiveness can be muted by a very well positioned defense. Yeah. So what else? Let's just look at what all the stupid people are saying, because holy shit, even at this moment, I've made these past videos on how a lot of elements of the online left has just gone batshit insane with regards to their hot takes on this conflict. And it's seemingly even now, after all these people said for days on end that there was going to be no invasion, yada yada yada, they're still saying complete bullshit. Here is probably the stupidest motherfucker on the internet, Kyle Kudinski. This guy is just gone. He's such a fucking idiot. Again, even at this moment, every single tweet that he makes suggests that really it's the US at fault above it all. Yeah, truly terrifying times. If Biden cuts off Russia from the global banking system in retaliation, Russia has stated that they consider that a declaration of war. People don't understand how on the brink we are. Can you imagine Russia declaring war on NATO because they lost their SWIFT accounts. This would be like the stupidest thing imaginable. At this point, we better all hope there's a secret Russia-China deal to shore up the Russian economy, because if there isn't, the declining power with nuclear weapons capable of fucking anything. Well, now at least he's admitting that Putin is a madman, which he is. This sounds like it includes SWIFT, which Russia said it will treat as a declaration of war. Holy fucking shit. Jesus Christ. Whoever follows this dumbass, just stop following this idiot. He's a fucking idiot. Here's unfortunately Jacobin, and I say unfortunately because we could use any leftist, like real leftist socialist magazines, a good thing, and they've had some of my work published, so I can't complain, in Spanish, by the way. But this is a bad take. Vladimir Putin is ultimately responsible for whatever horror he unleashes. But always there's a but. When you hear these people argue, discuss the current situation, they're always like, Russia is the aggressor, but NATO, blah, blah, blah. Let's save some outrage for those Western governments who choose to make war inevitable by refusing to compromise. What was the refusal to compromise? NATO never gave an offer for membership to Ukraine. Just stop this bullshit now, please. There was never any offer. Any offer. Jesus Christ. There was a cooperation mechanism that they established with Ukraine last year, and it is very fucking clear. And if you go to the NATO website itself, on where it discusses that deal, it is very clear. This does not presuppose membership. So just stop it with this. Just stop it. Like, what is the brinkmanship here? Sending 5,000 troops to Poland, like 5,000 US troops to Poland to calm their jitters? That is like, oh my God, the US is taking us to the brink of war. 5,000 troops. You gotta be kidding me. There was 500,000 troops were deployed to Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states in 1991. You really think if the US wanted to start a war, how many troops they could have already deployed? Come on, give me a fucking break. US does not want to get its hands dirty on war. It doesn't. I do think they want a war. I do think this fits into the security state narrative. It's gonna make them push for a bigger military budget. Of course it will. Of course it will. This is great news for the arms industry. But remember, just because it benefits them does not mean that they're the ones pulling the strings. There is one person pulling the strings here, and that's Vladimir fucking Putin, and no one else. Okay? And he would have done this shit regardless. He would have done this to any country, any neighboring country that even remotely approaches the West, as a partner in any way. And you know what is worse? That every single argument these dipshits give about how NATO is useless, whatever, and yeah, it probably was useless in the immediate post-Cold War years. I've said it on previous videos. Yeah, it's kind of pointless for NATO existing. Well, guess what? Now it's not pointless. You people are giving NATO every reason to exist right now, because you know which countries aren't getting bullied and aren't getting invaded? The NATO countries next to Russia, the Baltics. They're not getting invaded. They're not getting attacked. Take a hint why that's the case. Why do you think all these countries rushed to join NATO? And there was a tweet that I saw from someone. It's like all these Eastern European countries that like rushed to join NATO in the late 90s and 2000s is because they knew who Russia fucking was. And once Russia became led by someone like Vladimir Putin, their fucking worst nightmare would become true if they weren't in NATO. And Ukraine is proving that. Georgia is proving that. So congratulations. This all proves that NATO should exist. Who else? This dumbass. Russia's war in Ukraine should be condemned, but there's always this is the equivalent of I'm not racist, but unbelievable just how it's crazy how leftists often repeat the exact same lines that they decry from the right, because this is basically every but that you've heard from a right winger. Well, I'm not transphobic, but I'm not racist, but well, this is exact same shit. Russia's war should be condemned, but moralizing alone will not put an end to it. Really, Sherlock. Only diplomacy will, and that will mean applying pressure to Western governments to stop NATO expansion. You gotta be fucking kidding me! Another idiot. I can't do this. I can't do this. Yeah, it's really, really sad to see leftists fall for this and use the exact same rhetoric. I remember one time Michael Brooks, who I must say, my main disagreements with Michael Brooks. I don't like to speak ill of someone who has passed away, and I really like Michael Brooks's takes on economics and things like that. But his foreign policy takes veered into this territory on more than one occasion. I remember one time he said, this was shortly after like the attempted coup in Venezuela. He was like, "This is not the moment to talk about removing Maduro." And I'm like, this kind of sounds like after a mass shooting, this isn't the moment to discuss guns. So it's really, like leftists really should care a bit about the optics of what they say and realize, have a bit of self-reflection of how it often sounds exactly the same as what right wingers say on other issues. And finally, a bona fide tanky Jackson Hinkle. I made a decision to. Well, he's quoting Putin, but I love the replies because he's getting. So apparently he in a video he's saying that all of this is like a false flag operation. So there's no war going on actually, according to Jackson Hinkle. But he's getting roasted in the replies, which I think is kind of funny. Yeah, I think a lot of these tankies I think, there's nothing good about this war. There's nothing good about this invasion. But if we can salvage something good, it is that a lot of these idiots will be seen as the bullshitters that they are. And I think a lot of people who probably, maybe not the smartest, maybe not the sharpest pencils in the drawer, but who at least, in the face of overwhelming evidence that it is actually Putin's fault, that he is actually the sole aggressor here, when it becomes clear, and especially, and really, I don't want this to happen, but if there are human rights violations, if we start seeing photos of civilians killed or atrocities committed by the Russian army, a lot of these people will realize they will have a reckoning with themselves and realize, yeah, we kind of picked the wrong side. They'll be wiser for it, but and those will turn on people like Jackson Hinkle because they'll be seen as the Kremlin shills that they are. But sadly, I think a lot of leftists won't. I think they will double down. They will still find excuses to blame NATO, to blame the US, whatever. And this really annoys me because leftists should not be supporting invaders. They should not be supporting people who. This is a war crime. Invading a sovereign country is a war crime. Vladimir Putin is a war criminal, and we should not be supporting war criminals. I don't care that the greater good is fighting Western imperialism. This does not make Western imperialism any less. In fact, it'll make it worse for the simple reason, as I explained in a bit, that this is only going to push the US to spend more on defense, not less. So this will not make the world safer. This will not make Western imperialism any less. It'll also make a lot of European countries start spending more on defense because during these last 2 decades, a lot of them have pretty much discarded the possibility of Russia doing something crazy like this. Countries like Germany, which used to be the second most powerful country, like second strongest army in NATO, thousands of battle tanks at the end of the Cold War, and they suddenly shrank to, even Greece now has more tanks than Germany does, and they'll realize that maybe we need to spend a bit more, and they will because of this. So please to any tanky shithead or anti-war but pro-Putin leftist, please tell me how this makes Western imperialism less. It won't. And yeah, to all the people who have shilled for Putin, who have made fucking endless excuses over the past weeks, who have been saying that there isn't going to be an invasion, whatever, go fuck yourselves in hell. That's all I'm going to say. Go fuck yourselves in hell. On that note, I actually have work to do. That's why I'm down here. I'll try and make more videos, keep more updates. But yeah, it's going to be a long night. And yeah, just like I said, just take everything with a bit of a pinch of salt. Not because everyone's lying, but because these local incidents need to be fit into a broader tactical and strategic narrative, and it might take days before we know exactly what's going on. Yeah, but yeah, keep yourselves informed. And on that note, I will say goodbye. I'll see you all tomorrow, and hopefully with some good news. Hopefully, the Ukrainian armed forces will not collapse. We'll see. And in the off chance any Ukrainian is actually watching this, I feel absolutely terrible about what's going on, and I hope you all are safe and all the best for your country. So yeah, I'll see you next time.